welcome to the podcast today. We have as our guest the Maggie Pinkston.
Hello, everyone.
And of
So
course,
excited to be here.
Yes, we are glad to have you. And of course, my infamous co-host, the Jason Ross. Oh, we got to clap this
I love
time.
the clapping.
You got to
The
clap this
clapping's
time.
Pretty professional.
All right, just to let you know who Maggie Pinkston is. Maggie Pinkston is a legacy counselor from Brook Hill. She was one of our JC recruiters this last summer, the JC recruiter this last summer.
Go. Best job.
Andrew helped her. And then she also is a school teacher. She's been a school teacher. I know this is probably technically year one, but really year two.
Yes.
Because you're so glad to have you here today, Maggie.
Excited to be here.
And
Again.
Yes. So this is actually Maggie's second stint because this is your second podcast, but only your first one that's going to be dropped because the first one literally was dropped.
The first one was just for fun. Y'all didn't get to hear it. Little tease, I guess. Now we're in the real one.
That's a practice round.
Yeah.
I wasn't here for the first one.
Yes.
And so that's probably why
we needed you back, I guess.
We told her we were recording the first one, but we really didn't think she was going to be good enough. So
right. Of course.
It's like the person that sings on stage at a church. You know how there's like 4 mics up there, but one of them isn't on?
Yeah, it's just muted.
That was Maggie.
That's me. Yes, thank you. I feel so excited to be here today.
I'm so
wow,
glad
I'm
you're
so
here.
encouraged to start.
To start off here today, we're going to see your talent. You've
Oh,
already done this
gosh.
one time, but you're going to get to do it again. We're going to play the
Okay.
Brook Hill game.
This is why I'm back, actually, is
Yes,
to
to
do
redeem
better
yourself.
than what I did before. Who do I have to beat? That's
Tyler,
what I
let's
need to
throw
know.
this up here. Let's throw the leaderboard up here. Lindsay with 30.
Oh, no. I don't
Callan
think I
with
can beat her,
27. So if you'll
I
notice,
want to beat Callan.
Yeah. So well, Callan is your people. So if we count it young and old, Lindsay's an old, Callan's a young. You're a young. So the
Griffin with
oldies are
25.
winning. And we did recently have Tucker on the podcast, and he didn't even make it to the 20s.
No, he
So
No,
yeah.
he did not.
Some of these honorable
okay.
mentions probably need to go away. Okay, so 3 categories.
Jason
You know
Ross.
the 3 categories.
All right, wait. No, I got to disclaim it in every single thing because, listen,
20?
I had 10 seconds less than everybody else, okay? I was the very first game that we
he's-
played.
Technically,
Okay,
he's with
okay.
Lindsay at
Well,
the per
that's fair, I
second.
guess.
I'll take technically over anything.
That's fine.
Okay,
Well,
remember-
I'm back to redeem myself.
Okay,
I'm
remember the
ready.
rules: songs, cabins, activities.
Okay, and it's
30
even
seconds.
old, like
Yeah, I don't care.
old Okay,
Yes.
I'm
No
ready.
pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't be stressed.
All right,
Okay,
so
well, I'm
30
really
second
excited.
timer. We're gonna put the pressure on you right here.
Okay.
T Finch, go.
Okay, Pintos, Lipizans, Palominos, Thoroughbreds, Bays, Chestnuts, Galicinos, Roans, Arabians, Percherons, bumper boats, horseback, archery, riflery, nature, newspaper, drama, girl sports, boy sports, hodgepodge, crafts, laser tag.
22.
That's what I had.
I had 22.
That's what I had.
22?
22. That's actually pretty good.
Nice.
Dang.
We did
Kinda
miss the
wanted to-
free 8.
I didn't use it because last time y'all said I cheated by using it.
Oh,
The-
I
okay.
refrained.
All
Okay,
right, want
I
to see it.
refrained.
We do have to get us something to cover
I
the
know.
free 8.
I like the bumper boats throwback. That was a good one.
That was my
Newspaper?
that was
She
my
said newspaper?
chosen activity whenever I was
Bumper
a kid.
boats was real.
I think I had like
When you
maybe
actually got
Lydia
to-
leave my
when you
leave my
actually got to
activity or
ride
something.
the
Oh,
bumper boats.
when they were
Yeah, when they were
broken.
working.
Yeah.
I was there for the dock. Okay, I was there for the dock games.
People went for Philip Lee. That's what they
Yes, I was also a camper when Philip. I think I have. This is really like, this like tells me I was the annoying camper, you know. But like I was the one who carried a disposable camera around and took a picture of my cat. Like I think I seriously have a picture of Philip Lee and Stuart in some kind of
That's cool.
punishment outfit, just so
That's
like
cool.
laying around somewhere.
You need to send that in. We want to.
I gotta find
of
it
those
somewhere.
guys.
Oh my gosh.
So you were the bumper boat era of the seaweed.
Yes.
Do you remember that? That was what was killing them. Was the seaweed.
I mean, probably.
The motors were getting
Yeah.
wrapped
and it would
around.
get caught up. And, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
It was
makes
because
sense.
we had to get some carp, and now that's been taken care of. The carp, the
Yeah.
sea cows, basically.
Yes.
They're so big.
Yeah. Well, it's because they had plenty of vegetation. So.
Oh my gosh, yes, bumper boat era, newspaper era, drama, all the
Yeah.
all the
Oh, man.
activities.
So like third grade and on, what was it for you?
I did 5 years as a camper. So
Okay.
I started when I finished, I guess that's fourth or fifth or something. And so did 5 years, 2 years as a JC, 1 as an AC, and then I'm like doing the math, kind of 3 in a cabin, 2.5 kind of in a cabin, and then 1 as an LC last year, which, it's a lot of different things. And I love kind of like I love the Pintos, and that's my home base, but I wasn't there for, a super long time. So I really loved what I did last summer, I think the most. So definitely been through a lot of areas of camp.
It's a good thing. You did a great job doing that. How'd you get to camp?
Well,
Was
I
it the
had a
Little
friend.
Rock Christian concept?
Mhm. There's yes. Well, I was in public school till 7th grade,
Okay.
and there was a girl at Roberts Elementary
Mhm.
who invited me, which just that's how it happens, and you get
Wow.
invited. And I stayed going, and she didn't. I don't think. I got to be friends with Claire Fortson, and Claire Fortson
Yeah.
and I ended up being on homecoming court together, which is crazy.
Wow.
And my first year at camp, I was with Claire in Mary Kate's cabin as
Yes.
a percheron, so it was awesome. It was really
Oh, I
fun.
love Claire. We saw her at church the
I
other
love
day.
Claire. She's
and
so awesome.
Mary Kate was there.
Mhm.
Claire gave out some big award at home. What it was? Like
Yes,
senior,
I
don't
think
know.
it was like homecoming or something that
I think she had gotten the first one. It was like
Mhm.
overcoming,
Mhm.
things.
Yes.
Claire has Down syndrome. Jay. I
Claire
don't know if
is.
you know Claire.
I don't know
Awesome.
Claire.
Yes, she was Brook Hiller.
She was a
I
Brook
think
Hiller?
for
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Did she graduate? I can't remember.
I think so.
But yep, she's awesome. And
She's a
so
sweetie.
that was where kind of camp started for me, and I just stayed. There was like a reason every single year that I came back. We were just talking about how, my first summer, I think that I was on all summer to be on all summer, and I was so excited about that, and that was something that, brought me back, which I'm so glad that it did, but definitely not the reason that I'm still here now. And so I think it's really funny that I'm talking to my friends about next summer, and I'm like, yeah, there's just something in me that I feel like I'm going to be back, and there's always fruit that I think that the Lord shows me, and it's obviously so much that he doesn't.
Sure.
But it's weird having that evidence of like there's a calling here, and there's some people that never even like maybe even feel that or experience that or know that that's in them. So I love feeling that and feeling called back somewhere to do something.
How many years is that all together collectively if you come back this summer?
Oh my gosh, I think like 13 or 14 maybe. I got to do the math. So 7, so 5 as a camper, 2 as a JC, that's 7, and then 5 on all summer, 12. It'll be 13.
Wow.
I'm old.
13 years. That's crazy.
Yes.
So you're 09?
As my first year,
Mm-hmm.
probably. Yeah, 5th grade. Yeah, that's
So you've been here longer than Jason.
5th grade.
You've been here longer than me.
That's awesome. I love having that over
That's
you.
what I wanted to throw in there. That's all I was
You've
doing
been here
the math
longer,
for.
but I've rose through the ranks higher.
Oh,
So I don't
okay.
know. I don't know
Awesome.
what. I don't know what way.
Jason-
Well, I'm not done, so you never know.
Oh,
I
yeah,
like
take
it.
my job.
I like that.
I probably won't do that.
We're
Actually.
taking shots. I like
I
it.
don't think I could take his job. That would be so
Yeah,
scary.
And Maggie missed half summer, but Jason missed a full summer.
Oh,
It's
just a half.
true.
I'm just half a summer better.
Oh yeah. Did you count your half?
yeah.
Is it 12 and a half?
Yeah. Well, the half is like I count it as a year in a cabin, but it's not. Like I just was in cabins and I wasn't, and I was around. It was just
I find
rando
it.
summer.
I find it fascinating. Obviously, Brook Hill stays the same. I find it fascinating. However long you've been here, every single year it is different. It's like every
Yeah.
year that you're here, you're in
It
a
is.
different
It really is.
season of life when you come here. So it's like like you said, like God's teaching you something new,
Mm-hmm.
and because you have new perspective every single time that you come, and it's deeper and it's better and it's
Yes.
glory, it's all the stuff. But
And it's like along with that, I've done like different. Like I've walked in with new things, and everybody comes in every summer with like something new on their belt, like something new that they kind of bring to the
Sure.
team, which is so awesome. But then at the same time, I think and Maddie Kendrick were talking about this summer. Like she's like a percheron every single summer. Like, it was like she did the same thing, and she grew in leaderships and head of hill and whatever. But like, I came and I was like kind of doing something different every summer. And so I was always like, the only two that were the same was in my cabin, and I was on leadership one. So that was still kind of a new freshness to the summer. And so I've never really come and done the same thing twice. And then I've always come with some new, which we were talking about this earlier, experience from my year. Some of them not being fun and really challenging and a trial, and some of them being really sweet and like precious seasons of life that I'm really thankful for. And so it's been a ride, and I think everyone in my life knows. It's really funny. My work friend calls me a camp girl because camp is such a huge part of my life.
That's awesome.
And when it was funny, she met Neely and she was like, "Oh, camp girl, you're camp girl too?" And Neely was like, "Yeah." And it's just it's what you carry with you everywhere. It's awesome.
So what kept you coming back? Like did you ever have an option, or was your mom like, "Hey, you're coming to camp"?
I had an option. I was the one that like I prioritized it. When registration was out, I was like, Mom, you've got to do this. You've got to register me. There was a point where I paid half of my way to come as a camper. That's because great. And my dad's like very, like it's a great, value of $1 lesson of like, if you want something, use your Christmas money and pay for it. And so Meredith and I both did that. When we were campers for a couple years. And then obviously I was like, yes, I have to be a JC. I want to do that. Then I was like, yes, I absolutely want to be on all summer. And I was, at the time, I was playing basketball. I really enjoyed basketball, but I was ready for that to be over college any day. And I wasn't some huge like collegiate D1 athlete, but it was really, really important to me. And I always felt that, if I had to choose, it was always going to be camp. And so that was kind of what kept me coming back. And then as a staff member, when something is an investment, like, which we obviously talk about this all the time, but like when something actually like implants something in your life and actually grows you as a human being, I was like, and a part of my personality, I was like, I love this. I love the people here. I love the friendships that I'm making. This is making me successful. Like, it is only making me better to come back. And it's a job. I'm making money. Like, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to keep coming back pretty much until I can't anymore. And last summer, people were like, why are you going back to camp? Like, you are a teacher, like you have a job. I literally left. It was so crazy of a day. Like it was my last day of school, which I wasn't even a classroom teacher. I was an interventionist, which if you don't know anything about school, it's basically I would pull small groups of kids and work with them on specific skills so we can, improve their reading or math or whatever. And
that's different than I thought it was going to be. When you said interventionist,
kids with issues.
I thought you were like doing.
Well, there are
intervention.
behavior.
Okay.
There are behavior interventionists,
Yeah.
and there are like instructional interventionists.
Okay.
But that's what I was doing. So definitely less, taxing than a classroom teacher. But people were like, "Why are you coming back to camp?" And I was like, I'm not, I don't know. I'm going. Like, I was like, that just doesn't make sense for me to not to go. So I'm just going to go. And it was so special. And like my last day of school, I packed up, I drove down. We had our staff training banquet, which I was like, hey, everybody, I've been here, but hey.
What a celebration of the 2 weeks.
I worked really hard during that
I worked
staff
really hard
training.
driving here.
Yes, literally.
Yes.
And then started camp, and it was, it definitely, like every summer, I mean, that one really specifically, it's definitely more recent, but just every summer, I took something else away that I can use, in my job, in my relationships. And especially it's really special, which I know that y'all have heard from a couple alumni, but like working with kids, it's
like when your job is to work with kids, like your career.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like it.
Because so many things carry over in general.
Sure.
But then you have that on top of the experience that you have with kids. It's just so beneficial, and I'm really thankful for it, honestly, because I mean, it's why my first day of school is successful. It's why my kids think I'm fun, but they respect me.
Why is your first day of school successful?
Well, because we do orientation, and we do first day at camp, and we do activities, and we set literally everything.
The
and
funnel effect.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I was like talking to my other teachers, which I mean, even with all that experience, being a teacher is hard and it's scary and there's all the things you don't know. And I was just kind of like, I mean, I had a notes document where I had written, I was like, set up morning meeting, set up math, set up. And I had all these things that I just wrote for myself because, I mean, that's literally what we do the whole time. And so if you're like listening and you're like, oh my gosh, what is Brook Hill? Like, what's happening? There is like a strategy to everything. And when you get behind the curtain and you're being like trained on it, especially when you've been trained on it for years and years and years, it's like.
Don't gloss over that. Explain that. What's the setup?
So basically when you, do anything with a group of people, and when we're talking about camp, we have, when you first get there.
So if you're working, if you're Chick-fil-A, you're a manager.
Yes.
If you're, if you're a school teacher, if you're a coach of a team.
Classroom. It's any group of people, and especially when you're talking about kids, which is definitely works for adults too, but just different language. When you're talking about kids, you have to be the one that sets the tone. We talk about this all the time with our counselors, like, you have to be the one in charge. And with kids, if you're not the one in charge, that is scary and definitely not fun for you. Man. And I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I'm like, if I'm not in charge, I'm going to lose it. Like, it's going to be crazy.
I think what happens for leaders is we expect things out of the people that are following us, but we did nothing to set those expectations.
Absolutely. And that's where you have issues, right?
That's it. Too. They're frustrated. The kids are frustrated. And they're like, why are you wanting me to do that? Did you tell me to do that? Did you set me up to do that?
Even in school, like when we have a day or we have something that is falling apart and I'm super frustrated, I have to first, before I get mad at them, I have to first ask myself, what did I do? What did I miss? What did I not say? And there have been multiple times, even this year, that I've said, all right, guys, we need to have a conversation.
Right.
I'm really sorry because I didn't tell you this. You are still being a little out of control. We know better than that. But, it's you being a leader in the sense of like, even apologizing, like when you're not doing the thing. But
that was my bad. That was my bad. Yes. I didn't set that up.
I'm in charge. Like I am
the
leader.
leader has to own it.
And you have to get on their level too, because I feel like the longer you are in leadership, the more and more those things are common sense to you.
Yes.
But they've never heard.
And we tell our counselors
before.
at camp, when you are doing the same thing 5 weeks in a row, you think that you're like, oh yeah, they just know. I told them. And you're like, no, you told them 2 weeks ago. You didn't tell them this. And so basically when we set things up at camp, we have, a very specific kind of instruction that we tell our campers, we tell our junior counselors, which admin tells us, the actual counselors that are in charge, that makes camp so successful. And I think that, when I was a JC and especially on All Summer, I was like, who came up with this? I was like, this is it. This is the way. And especially with wanting to go into kids, I was like, I need to learn these skills. I've got to be able to do this because it really does. It only benefits me. And there were times last year that, my administrators or other teachers were in the hallway and these kids are screaming and they're throwing things. And I'm just like, why? We don't have to do it. We can have fun and not be throwing things everywhere. And so I think that it definitely taught me a lot of skills, that I'm sure we'll talk about with your teams and with the different things that you can carry over in whatever job that you're doing. And honestly, just makes you a better person, makes you a better friend, makes you a better girlfriend, makes you a better daughter and, sibling. But definitely for me, things that I've applied to my workplace. And this is my first year of being a classroom teacher. I teach 4th grade. And so from August to December, I've been with 23 4th graders. And so these things I'm freshly applying to my life. It's very fresh.
I know Jay is a teacher currently, and I'm a former teacher. And I remember going into the classroom feeling like I was ahead of the game.
Yes, absolutely.
Because before I taught, I had done 3 years of Brook Hill. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that you just feel so ahead of the game because I think, in teaching, there's 2 things. There's learning your material and there's learning kids.
Oh, yeah.
When you already know kids and all you have to do is learn your material, and usually you're not even in teaching. You're usually in teaching because you already know your material.
Sure.
Right? I was a math teacher because I knew math.
I
mean,
you're good.
I would misspell stuff on the board, and I said, I'm not an English teacher. I'm a math teacher.
Right.
Okay. And so, it puts you so ahead of the game. But I love what you said. At camp, we learn 2 things. We learn basic leadership, and then we learn people skills. Mm-hmm. Kids is what we deal with, but it's still people.
Yes.
Well, dealing with staff. You learn the people skills, because you're all, you're all on the same campus all summer long. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you kind of have to to learn to look past people's flaws and get along with each other, because you
Absolutely.
can't have a unified staff. So you have to.
And there's so many lessons for every personality. And so, like, even as I reflect on my 5 years of being at Brook Hill, like my first year, I had to learn to chill out and to not repel people and to be self-aware of what I was doing, what I was saying, what is my leadership, what's the effect of my leadership. I mean, that was my first summer. My next few summers, it was, it was diving a little bit deeper, and it was like, okay, the Lord's been working on my heart this year. I've definitely developed some changes and some things that have made me better and made me more capable to lead people. But then it's, how do I deliver this information to people my own age, and how do I connect with people that are different than me? Because that's a skill. If you connect in your workplaces, like even when before teaching, I worked in retail for 3 months as a manager, which was kind of random, but it was something fun that I wanted to do. And there were so many people on staff with me that they were so different. I didn't really know how to necessarily, like, I was kind of nervous. I was like, well, if I'm telling them what to do, but they've worked here longer than me, like, I want to make sure, like, oh, I've got to connect with them. I've got to, I've got to build that relationship.
There has to be buy-in.
You have to win people over if you want, success and leadership and just in relationships in the workplace.
See, that's the difference between positional leadership and actual leadership.
Sure.
See, a title is not a leader.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have to earn it, and I think good leaders assume that they don't want to follow them. Right? Bad leaders assume because they have a title, people want to follow me. That's not how that works. You have to make those deposits like a bank if you want to make the withdrawal of them respecting you.
Yeah.
And any times you have an oops with them, you're making a withdrawal and you don't really mean to or need to.
Yes.
And that's how people get overdrawn as leaders.
Absolutely.
Disrespecting people, talking down to. But I love that story of you working retail. Can we share that a little bit? So as you're here each summer, you're gaining skills and you're starting to notice.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a little different than the people around me. I know
average,
some things.
A little bit above.
Yeah. In
working hard.
Yeah, and not necessarily because in no offense, but not necessarily because Maggie's so amazing.
Right.
It's because everyone else doesn't understand that. Show up consistently, work hard.
Basic skills.
Basic soft skills
Literally.
that every place wants. So your interview, can you tell this?
Yes.
Let me just set this up. Maggie's looking for a job. She goes and she is in the middle of the interview of her job. And what happens?
Yes, I was just looking for some extra money. I was student teaching at the time in Little Rock. And so I was, I walked in one day and I was like, can I get an interview or an application or whatever? And they sent me home with an application. I applied. We sat down, and the more I started talking, and she had told me before, we have 2 or 3 interviews that we're going to do before we hire you. And about halfway through, 3/4 of the way through of me talking, and most things that I talk about are skills that I learned at camp. And in my interview that I got to be a teacher, and any other job interview that I've had, that's what I talk about. And she was just kind of like, I think that we need to make you a lead, which is like their managing position. And I was like,
who gets promoted during an interview?
Which I did. I was like, here's the deal. I was like, I have never worked retail, and I don't even know if I can promise you that I'm going to be here for very long, because I'm interning and I'm trying to book it to Northwest Arkansas after this semester. Like, I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. Sure. And I was like, I just want the entry-level retail position. I want to make some money and help people shop. Like, that sounds awesome. And she was like, I think you need to be the lead. And I was like, okay. and it's not, you're 110%. It's not because I'm some special person that God is like, oh, look at her. It's like, no, I showed up to work for a couple summers and picked up some skills that I have a lot of friends that have done the same thing and have these same skills and are excelling in their workplaces. And it's just like, it's the certain things that you do in a world of, a little bit of laziness, a little bit
entitlement.
And oh my gosh, yes. That will make you successful.
My job owes me.
Yeah.
That's what entitlement is.
Right.
My job owes me versus I am here to serve. Like Jesus said, right? I'm not here to be served. I'm here to serve. Like literally what Jesus said is the opposite of what everybody
Right.
wants.
Right.
I'm here to be served, not to serve. That's literally the attitude that people, and so when that's the dominant attitude in the
Sure.
workforce today, when you walk in and say, I'm here to serve, I just want to work the register.
It's-
That's what Maggie was saying.
like,
I just want to hang up the clothes. And they were like, yeah, you're going to be the manager.
You're gonna have to run this, and you've never done this before ever. In your
But
whole
you
life.
have integrity. You have character. You're going to show up consistently.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things? Tell me that you said you kept talking about what you were learning. What were those things you were like? Give us an insight into this
Sure.
interview. Like pretend we're there. What did you say? What were these things that
Well,
you
you
were?
know, you have
What is
the-
this gold that gets all of us as manager on the first day? Come on, teach us.
Yeah, teach
Well,
us how to get promoted.
Oh
in
my
an
gosh,
interview.
I'm gonna teach you guys, my two bosses, how to be promoted. Okay, but I mean, I think that when you're in an interview, a lot of times they'll ask you, like, what do you bring to the team? What is your strength? What is your whatever? And I do think that it's hard to talk about something that you haven't personally experienced. And so, like, if
So
you
good.
haven't ever worked a job and worked really hard, then probably go do that first and get a little bit of experience in just the work, because the
Yeah.
whole way that Brook Hill is structured is to do what first? To be a JC. You're working. You don't have a title. You don't have, I mean, you really don't have anything, but you're wearing a red t-shirt, and that's awesome. And you have this, superpower of, I can do anything. I can have fun and also work hard. Hard work can be really fun. That's the first lesson. And so I think that
Foundational.
if you don't have experience with that, it doesn't have to be Brook Hill Camp Counselor. It could be anywhere, do some serious work and have some habits of like being able to turn it on, because most people, me included, you don't come naturally to just working really, really hard and pouring sweat. Like when I'm working next to you guys, when we're organizing or we're cleaning stuff out, y'all are going, and it's pushing me. I'm like, I can't slack. I gotta move. Okay. And when you're surrounding yourself with people who are working hard though, like that really first introduces you to it. You're like, whoa, this is what it really feels like to, put in some work here. And, that may look like sports. That may look like a job in high school. That I don't know what that looks like, but that's kind of the foundational, like what you're saying, Jason.
And I think that sounds easy.
Sure.
Like learn to work.
Simple.
But it's
or
just
basic.
like anything. Okay, well I want you to run a mile. Well, I know how to run. Yeah, but you don't know how to run a mile.
Right.
Okay, well I want you to run 2 miles. Okay, well I know how to run a mile, but I don't know how to run 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna have to get around someone who knows how to run 20 miles.
Absolutely.
And then they're going to baby step you up there.
Mhm.
And
Right.
we think, oh, work hard. That's easy. But until it's just like anything, it's a skill. Work is a skill.
Mhm.
And until you've gone out there and actually pushed yourself on a
Right.
daily basis,
Right.
until you've got around people who work way harder than you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it.
Because you think,
That really is it.
I thought I was a hard worker. Until I got around people that worked way harder than me and had 3 jobs.
It's a little bit of that humility that you need
Yeah.
to just be like, and
know,
especially
I
for
mowed
some
a
of
few
us who are
yards.
very like, I'm a little bit more like on the arrogant side naturally, and I was kind of like,
Like
oh,
Jason.
I know, yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
That's me, yeah.
Never David though. It couldn't be.
No.
Couldn't be you. No.
That's me. That's my natural self. It's
Right,
arrogant.
right. Yeah,
That's
of
right.
course.
The 9
But
in
just
me.
like that, just that like, I'm really good at this. I'm really, really good at whatever it is. And then you get around someone who's like actually really good at it, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do more. And what is that going to do? It's going to benefit you, and it's going to grow you. And so I think that, first you have to learn how to really work hard, and then whenever you're working hard, you develop all of these other skills that that hard work pours into your relationships. And so like going into that job specifically, I was like, to be on a successful team, people have to like me. Now, I can't, be anxious about people liking me. I can't be a people pleaser, but I cannot repel people. And I can't be on a team where people have an issue with me because of something that I'm doing. And maybe some people are a little judgmental, and maybe some people a little bit harder to, to connect with, but like that's not my issue. My job is to connect and to win people over so we can have success, because if
That's
you
good.
don't, then like how are you going to get the thing that you're trying to accomplish?
How good of a leader do you want to be is the question.
Right.
And when we're complaining about, well, it's their fault why they won't follow me. Okay, that's not leadership.
Right.
Leadership is being such a good leader that everybody wants to follow you,
Right.
even the easily offendable.
Right.
Even the ones who are soft.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's ownership.
like that's it.
And I think that as you were talking, I was even just thinking like one of the things that I learned at Brookhill is it's yours. Like whatever it is that you're talking about or complaining about or thinking about, you own it. Like it's your area, that's your ship. But like that's your area. And at the end of the day, it's honest. It's like for me, I was like, I never want to be caught complaining about something that I myself can fix or I myself can work hard to make better. And I do think that
Well, what do we always say? What are you doing when you're complaining?
well, you're telling on yourself.
You're telling on yourself.
It's and it's just this very
great.
selfish mindset. And I think, of course, everyone has those moments where when the door is closed, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I'm so whatever. And you're human. Like, that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, like when you are deciding to do the extra work or when you're deciding to have the extra conversation or when you're deciding to take whatever that thing is that's going to make your area better, it's like, you're going to either do it or you don't. And as a leader, it's your job, to own that area. And then when you go out in the real world, like I want the leaders that I'm working for to do that. And we were talking about it at lunch. I was like, I value working at Brookhill so much for, a million reasons. But one of the biggest ones is I have the easiest leaders to work for because you guys are pursuing it's just a different ballgame when the people that are leading you are thinking about all those things as well. And
that's culture.
You're
getting into now culture,
Right?
And when you create a culture, then it takes a lot of work and sacrifice to create a culture
and time,
Well,
years.
and because leadership is not given, leadership is built, which is what
That's
the
really
model
good.
of Brookhill, where you become a JC and you're not really in leadership, but you're here to serve, which
Yes.
is the foundation of a good leader.
Yes.
And so when I got my first job at Little Caesars, and
pizza.
Come on.
pizza, yeah, man, hot and ready. When I went and I started working, and I was literally there, and the mindset was I'm gonna do what everybody else won't do. I'll
Right.
outwork everybody, and it was just the competitive nature of me was I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work and I'm gonna outdo everybody, and so not in an arrogant way.
like
but
you
in
normally,
a-
like you normally would.
Like
But
you
in a-
normally would.
Not- but I was going to serve. How can I help
Yes.
the best I can? What area can I help the best I can? So I was doing dishes, I was carrying sheet pans, and I was making the dough, and I was throwing the pizza. I got really good at throwing the pizza dough.
Come
and,
on.
But and I'm not saying that to brag.
Right.
But I served as best as I could for the company, and that's the foundation of it. And you have to have that foundational root of hard work and grind, and then I worked myself out of a job, not because I said, hey, I deserve a raise, but because when they moved me up, I was not able to do dishes anymore because I had to oversee
Yes.
more people,
Right.
if that makes sense. So I worked myself out of the job, not because I asked to be moved away from dishes, but because the more and more you grow in leadership with that foundation, the more and more you can't be everywhere at once, and you have to learn to delegate. Anyways, so I think that's really really good.
And I think it's that's such a real picture of what growing in leadership looks like. And I think that the attitude of you're not too good to do a job. And I think that that's sometimes when people get handed titles, like when we talk about having titles versus actually leading that specific area, that, it sometimes can skip over that really important step of no, I can wash a dish. I can take out a bag of trash. I can do those things, but where am I needed most in an area? It's overseeing all of this. There are so many people on our staff. I can lead a horseback activity, but that's not necessarily my job in a certain moment. And I can, do a certain skill, but I want to teach you how to do it, and then we can multiply. And then now we have a really crazy machine that all these people are doing all these different things, and it's all because the leaders are doing their jobs and they're leading people.
Yeah, but I mean, that's it. Jesus showed us the model of how to create culture. You know, the first thing is to be a disciple, right? And then to learn to lead disciples. Then you learn to lead disciples that are leading disciples. I mean, you know, that's how the church was created. You know, leadership, it's not this big secret. Jesus showed us how to do it. You know, and it's just, can we capture it and then go out and lead? So as you're teaching, you are now in the workforce. You are a big girl now. You know what I'm saying? You're
so sad.
You're not you're not doing the
awesome.
little easy jobs anymore. You're now in career mode.
Career mode, absolutely.
So, you know, what are some of the things, you know, now that you've been a student of leadership and, you know, got to apply it here at Brook Hill, but then, you know, got out in what we call, quote unquote, the real world. What are some things that you see other leaders struggling with? You know, what are some of the skills? You know, you can't be the only rookie that, you know, went into that school or whatever, or, you know, that you've been around, even with students you saw. What are some things that you're seeing today people struggle with, and even some old school leaders? What are they struggling with?
Sure.
That leadership could help them.
And I think that, you know, being a good leader partners with so many other concepts, you know, like being an open-minded person, being a willing friend, or, you know, whatever you know, really important quality that we need to have just in people. I think that definitely also partners with leaders. I think on certain teams and in different groups of people, it's really, really hard when you don't have listeners. Like when you don't have someone that can just listen and that can have some kind of motivation to find a solution and to find a goal. We have people that shut down. We have people that won't even listen to you in the first place. You know, that's something that's going to wreck a team and is going to wreck growth and success and whatever you're trying to do. I mean, it's so hard. I love my teacher team, but I can't imagine when you sit down with a group of people. I mean, it's hard to make a decision with a huge group. Talk about even just 5 people. You know, we're trying to make a decision. We're trying to move on. Everybody has different opinions, but no one's listening. Like, no one's actually...
So you come to a problem.
Sure.
And you've got this group of people, leaders, that are sitting around trying to solve it, and no one's wanting to listen. What are we doing? Are we complaining?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
are we saying why it won't work?
Yes.
Are we negative?
Yes. I mean, I think we definitely... And the culture of our world is about me, right? So I'm going to complain about the things that I don't have and that I don't get. I am going to tell you all the things that don't work because I want to be right, and I know that there's an issue, so I'm just going to be right. So I'm just going to tell you how you're wrong and how it doesn't work and be negative and not move past all of that, because what is that? That's a lot of pride. That's a lot of, you know, arrogance. Some of
self.
that is
if we can't get over self,
it's
you're never going to be a
me.
great teammate
Right.
if you're stuck on
That's
self.
Right. And as a leader, I think that, you know, we're not going to fix the world. We're not going to just get out there and change people and make everybody the best teammate in the whole world. I think as a leader, you know, you have to be the bad guy. I think that you have to be honest, and you have to have those relationships so that people don't hate you, you know, when you're saying, hey guys, I know that this is hard and I know that there's not a perfect solution, but let's start with A and let's see how we can, you know, and take a step forward. Okay, now we've done A, let's do B, let's see how we can take a step forward. And I think that if, you know, we have leaders that are lazy, we have leaders that are afraid to upset people, so they're not doing their job to actually, you know, create success, and then their team is stressed because we're not where we're supposed to be. And then you have leaders that are overbearing and that are micromanagers and that haven't set you up to do it on your own. And so I think that there's always this middle ground of like the two ditches of like, let's not be lazy, let's not be disengaged, but let's not micromanage. And so it's just this finding this middle ground, which, you know, no leader is perfect. And I think that your team has to have grace. And that was definitely something that I learned the past few years, more recently at camp, is just like, you don't know it all. Like, you don't have all the right answers. And even if your brain tells you that you do, you don't. And at school, I'm like, you know, I have these issues, but I don't know it all. And so I'm going to give grace here. But I still know that this is right. And I still, you know, it's like having those non-negotiables that you believe, and those things that, you know, you're going to do no matter what because they're successful and you believe that they're true or whatever. And then you have this still grace because, no one wants somebody on their team that is bitter and holding a grudge and all of that stuff
Right.
too. And so I mean, it's a hard thing to navigate because you can't solve the problem. And I'm
Right.
I want to break it down and figure out what's the issue and just solve everybody's everybody's problems. But it's also there are steps. There are things that we can do to lead better and to make teams more successful.
I think
Great.
you always have the question of when you're looking at your team, do I have the right people in the seats, or do I need to get rid of some people?
Right.
Right, and you may not always be able to do that. But the other issue is, have we trained them?
Mm-hmm.
And so
So
I
good.
think we're so quick to say we have the wrong people instead of trying to train
Have we set them up?
That's right. Have we set them up?
Mhm.
So, if you're working at an entry-level job, obviously Maggie's talking about being in a career.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just coming onto a team, you can be the best teammate possible and start using what we're talking about on those teams. But as you grow in your leadership, then you start being the one who has to do the setting up, who has to approach problems, because sometimes you have to set up approaching a problem. Okay, guys, we got this issue, and I know we're going to throw out ideas. And what's going to happen when we throw out ideas is some of these things that we throw out are going to be uncomfortable. Some of these things are going to affect you, and you're not going to want to do them.
Sure.
Okay, but let's throw all that out and assume we want to do what's best possible for the team. And in that setup, you're trying to create culture, to
Right.
not complain, don't be negative, don't make it about you, and those. So, but it starts with you being that incredible young, low on the
Yep.
rank,
Yep.
Sure.
leader.
Yeah. And there's a lot of leadership in that spot that, you don't see is there because it's not a title and it's not a
Sure.
position. I went to one of my coworkers and we went to this leadership
Because you're on the
training.
bottom. You're on the bottom, as a teacher.
It's the lowest that I
you're the
could be.
rookie there. But
I'm
yet
the youngest person in the building.
and you don't know everything. You got a lot to learn. But
Absolutely.
But you're coming in with an incredible foundation. So
Yes.
how
Right.
do you lead from that?
Right. And I think that this goes for, definitely people in my position and in my age, but this, especially in the education world, this goes for a lot of teachers who are not administrators or who don't want to be administrators. We went to a leadership conference. We had to apply for it. And there was 2 teachers from every school, and the whole Fayetteville Public School District was doing this little leadership training. And what they talked about was leading from the middle. You have to have leaders that are in the middle. And so obviously your top leaders, they have to lead. They have to do their jobs. There are things that are not going to work if they don't, step up and be responsible on their area, whatever. But you also have to have leaders from the middle, because if you have a huge group of people who are all negative, all complaining, all not getting on board, it's very, very difficult, very rare for a leader to change that entire culture, one leader, all those people. But when you have leaders that are a couple of them sporadically in the middle, then you have people that are in those closed-door conversations when the administrator's not in there. It's this, okay, but there's not a perfect solution. What's one thing that you feel could make this better? It's
Yep.
the person that's
That's
in
great.
there that's saying, which really challenged me because it really pushes you to have integrity. And I kind of struggle, to just, I want to please everybody. So I want every conversation to be successful. So I don't really want to challenge people that much unless I care a lot about something. And so a lot of times I'll just be like, yeah, you're right, whatever. But I think that it's really important to have leaders that aren't leaders, quotation marks
Absolutely.
around that,
Right.
but are leading in the sense of perspective, that
That's
are bringing some
excellent.
wisdom to the table. Because it's if you don't have that, you're just going to feed off of this negative whatever. I mean, we had a team last year that moved to, everybody from that team left, and it was just kind of negative, and no one could even be friends with them, and it was just kind of this yucky thing of just, that's killing the team. That's kind of killing the energy, and no one was leading in that group. And so if you don't have somebody that can step in, I mean, when we were talking about, being at Brookhill. There was a summer that I wasn't on leadership, but I had leading conversations. And it doesn't mean that you're not a leader. It's just whatever position that you're in, you're saying, okay, I'm responsible for this and I've got to take some ownership and lead in these conversations. And if you're in the real world and you're really, really young and you're the rookie, like that doesn't mean that you can't do that. It's definitely harder and it's scarier. Like, I mean, I've sat in meetings where I've said a couple of things to my teammates and they didn't really like it. And my administrator was like, wow, like, I can't believe, you're bringing some perspective to this.
Yeah.
But anybody, that's the thing, is like anybody's capable of stepping up and helping and leading from that middle spot. And so I loved that training.
Everybody needs a team, needs team members who catch the vision and run with it.
Yeah.
That's leader. You can get 2 or 3 people. If a leader can have people on their team that catch the vision and run with it, others will have, because you can constantly point to them.
Yeah.
Hey, I like it when Jason did this. Hey, I like it. And then all of a sudden people start going, okay, well, I guess I need to be like Jason. Because I guess that's what the boss is wanting.
Right.
The leader is wanting. Which Jason, obviously being the camp director, he's obviously a major leader here at camp. But he even does that for me and Lynn. As me and Lynn are throwing things down, he's like, okay, what Dave said, and when he echoes it, it's huge. It's massive. When that echo starts happening, and then when people who even don't have a title like Jason can, no, he has a title, but people, when counselors start echoing it,
Right.
that echo, it's those echoes.
Well, it's just,
that
and it
take
kind of is
off.
contagious. And I mean,
It's
in camp, we were talking
contagious.
about this. Camp is a little special because pretty much almost everyone, if not everyone, they want to follow the vision, and a lot of times in the real world, you're going to have to do a lot of creating and building to get that type of team. I mean, it is very, very special.
It takes time.
The team that we work on here. But when you have people that are doing those things, like it's so easy, to follow that. And I mean, even in my school, there are people that I watch and I'm like, okay, like I want to follow her. Like I have a teammate, she's a math coach. And she could be my mom. Like that's how different we are in age, and we got to be friends last year. And like she was a big reason why I would come back to Asbel, because I was like I would follow her. Like she's taught me things. She is so like willing to apologize and be wrong and listen, and I was like, she's a teammate that I like I want to have. And if you don't have any of those, it's not even encouraging as a leader to be on that team. And if you feel called to like go in there and do it, it. But it's like, it's hard to be the only one.
I've seen where, and this is, I think, the special thing about Brookhill is, from leadership, you want mid-tier people like we're talking about, it's the best. Oh my gosh, being a mid-tier person is the best. It's literally the best because you're not the bad guy.
You don't have all the like
you
pressure.
just get to agree and you get to.
It's beautiful.
It's the best.
Yeah.
But I have mid-tier people. When I'm talking to the senior counselors, the senior counselors have mid-tier people with their people, and then the JCs have mid-tier people. So really, and there's 2 cycles that can happen is here's the bottom, here's the top. And the bottom circulates negativity upwards in that spiral of then you have mid-tier people going the wrong way, upwards. When you have a leader and a strong leader and a strong leadership structure, you have positivity. Because now,
that's so good.
Where I have my head of hills that are, and then they have their mid-tier people, and then they have their mid-tier people, all the way down to the JCs, all the way down to the campers, it creates a whole healthy environment and a whole healthy structure.
It's an attitude that you set at the top, and it just carried all the way down.
And it's hard to break that. I mean, somebody starts talking negative, and then it takes one person from the team to go, actually.
Yeah, they start complaining about the campers, and then you're able to say, okay, so the campers are in charge of your bunkhouse?
Yeah.
So the campers are in charge of your activity? So the students are in charge of your classroom?
Right.
Or are you in charge of your classroom?
You had the worst cabin cleanup, and it's their fault?
Wow, I thought you were the leader. Those little subtle roasts, and it makes people go, oh, it's a mirror, right?
Oh man,
you're holding a mirror
Absolutely.
up. And
I remember there was a specific staff meeting that you did, and I was still a senior counselor, and you talked about you talked about what creates a toxic work environment. That was the title. It was like 7 things that create a toxic work environment. And you you said all these things, and at the end of the meeting I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing all those things. I'm a part of the problem. I'm the guy.
7
me.
toxic behaviors.
Oh my gosh.
Blame shifting, constant negativity, taking everything personal. I found that. I need to do that one again.
It was a good
Bring
one.
it back.
But
Oh my
it was so
gosh.
subtle. It's not like, hey, we're going to pull you aside and we're going to rip you for everything you're wrong. It's the subtle culture
Right.
addressing of,
Right.
hey, here's things that make an unhealthy work environment. And then it makes everybody go, is that me? Oh, it for sure is.
And
I'm the problem.
And I think that you have to be willing. I mean, you have to be willing to first accept that you could be doing those things, because I mean, there are people
Sure.
that
Oh, sure.
are not even willing to take that. But I think too, it's just when you hear, complaining, and when you hear a leader calling you out for that in an appropriate setting, just like what you're saying, I don't want to be ripped a new one for because I'm human, and because
Sure.
I wasn't aware that I was doing something. That's so fair, and leaders are going to make mistakes, whatever, but I could just picture different work environments right now. If a leader came in and they had an appropriate conversation with their staff or with their team or with their group of people and said those things like we do. What do we do all the time at camp? We have meetings in the middle of the week. We have meetings on the weekends. We have staff training, which is
Lots of
meeting.
training. Yeah.
It's all the trainings that are
Right.
literally making you constantly think
yeah.
about those things that, it's like some people are like, well, how do you just know this? How is
Right.
this? It's because we are constantly talking about it, and we're constantly holding each other accountable because our leaders are constantly talking about
And obviously the reason we have so many meetings at camp is because we're dealing with high school and college
it.
students.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
On our full-time
100%.
staff,
Sure,
I don't have
sure.
to tell
100%.
Jay twice a week.
Jason,
You
don't
know,
complain, okay?
That's right. We have smaller
Sure.
reasons. But let's sit there for just a second. To be someone who can self-evaluate until you can be honest with yourself. I think when you're young, people have to be honest with you because you're too clueless to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
But there has to be
So true.
there is a ceiling you hit that if you have to always be told what you need to work on without being able to look in the mirror, there's a ceiling you hit that you can't go higher. Because in order to be an incredible leader, and I'm not saying you don't continue to take input from others, but you have to be able to hear it. When you're younger, people have to sit you down and go, Jason, you did this and you shouldn't have. And you go, you know what? You're right. But there's got to be a point where Jason could hear the toxic behaviors and go, is that me?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
Right.
if you can't say that might be me, if all you're doing is going, that's Maggie, that's Jason, that's Tyler, when
Sure.
someone's talking,
Yeah.
then you're stuck
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and you can't go any farther.
And it's what are you, which this is I've been in both boats, I feel like, where I'm aware of the things, but I've definitely been the boat where well, that's that person and that's this person and I'm perfect. I'm doing it or whatever. And I think that it's what I look back to different seasons and I was I was not pouring anything in. And especially when you think about with us counselors who were in college or whatever during the year, you go to camp and definitely my first summer, my second summer, I'm getting poured in all this stuff. It runs out. This is not some, magic that's going to just carry you for the rest of your life. I mean, and we've had so many alumni come in and tell us, this should be, a catalyst for, what you're going to do. But you have to take responsibility. And I think as a leader, we're talking about ownership. You have to take ownership of your own, self-awareness. You have to take your own ownership of the things that you're putting in. And so when I started, and even this year, I've had such a really special year diving into a really involved church, and from January to now, just seen so much growth. And it's because, okay, what was I doing? And we did a Zoom. I had a Zoom of girls this past semester, which has been so fun. And Maddie Kendrick talked on one of our Zoom sessions, and she said something that I just loved it. She said, whenever you are, we were talking specifically about getting really emotional if you are like hurt and you're offended. And like Maddie was like, I go to my room and I don't want to talk to my roommates. I want to be by myself, and kind of like throw yourself a little pity party. Like we've all kind of been there. She was like, I now make myself uncomfortable. So I think of something that makes myself uncomfortable and I go do that because I know that it's going to change and it's going to grow me later. And so like I'm thinking about during the year, there were so many times that I didn't challenge myself. I didn't make myself do anything that was uncomfortable. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't listening to podcasts. I wasn't going to, prayer nights or whatever it was. And, and this is some of this leadership stuff. It's not spiritual. Like there are skills that you can work on to make yourself just a better person and a better leader. But like when I'm talking about trying to grow in my leadership and in my relationship with the Lord, it really changed when I was like, I'm going to do the hard thing. Like I'm going to do the thing that's really tough because that's going to change me. Like,
but that's not natural.
No.
Discipline. Discipline's not natural.
Sure.
No. We migrate to easy. And it's easy as a leader to create an easy where you've got no one resisting you. And that is
absolutely.
When you are the highest person in the room, that is a dangerous place in leadership because you're not going to keep growing. And so now, doesn't mean, so when I rise to the top, I need to quit and go somewhere else and start at the bottom. No, but you're going to have to put yourself intentionally in rooms that will push you. Now,
challenge you.
For you right now, you said you're going to Brook Hill, but you're going to this church. You're plugged into it. I happen to know the pastor, little Steve, Stephen Sexton, so he's going to challenge you. So that's going to create change that stirs up those ruts.
And I think if you're expecting change and you want change to happen, like I've talked a lot about this with these girls. We've had really fun conversations. It's not something that you arrive at. It's not something that comes quickly. It's not, we know all of those things, but at the end of the day, it's what we expect. Like when our eyes are closed and we're going to bed, like you want this thing to just like microwave happen and get here quickly. And I mean, Pastor Stephen says, he is like, give me a year. Don't give me a week. Don't give me a month. And with anything, no matter what it is, you've got to give it some time to actually form disciplines. And so there was a time this year where Jason and Sydney, which we were all like so thankful, they did a Zoom for some of us like older counselors graduating a little bit, going into different things and starting to adult in life and everything. And like I was getting poured in and I was getting filled in there. And then it was like, okay, I've got to get filled in from church and I've got to have my own quiet time. But then I was like, I'm going to pour out. I've got to challenge myself some. And so it's just like being self-aware enough to know, like, what do you need? Like, what do you need to get? Who do you need to surround yourself by? And then what are the actions you need to take? Because for a while, I went through seasons where I was just getting poured in. It was awesome. I was like, oh, I know all these things. I'm listening to all these podcasts. I'm having all these prayer nights. It's awesome. But I wasn't pouring out. There were times where I was, talking to all these people. And in college, I went to a little youth night and I led some high school girls, but I wasn't really getting filled in. And so if you don't line yourself up, and especially in leadership, like if you're not leading people, if you're not like having people around you that are like encouraging you and walking with you, and then if you're not being led and challenged, like that whole recipe is for kind of growth.
You're a water bottle,
right?
I mean, if you pour it all out, there's not going to be anything left, and it's got to be poured back in. I mean, this is literally what you're talking about.
Right.
Is you have to have people pouring into you.
Yeah.
And then you have to be pouring out.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes both.
It is not comfortable all the time because for people to pour into you, a lot of times they're pouring in things that you don't own yet. So it's hard. It's a little bit of a, spirit versus flesh kind of concept. I heard it like this once. Somebody said that you want to become so comfortable being uncomfortable that when you're comfortable, it's uncomfortable. I don't know if that makes sense.
You're like,
man,
you want to be so comfortable. Sorry, you want to be so comfortable with uncomfortable that when you are comfortable, it's uncomfortable. If that makes sense.
You're not used to the
you're
comfort.
Like, whoa, hang
you're
on,
like,
I'm supposed to be being challenged right here. Because and that happens. You leave camp, and there's like a whole season, before school starts or whatever, that you're kind of like, wait, I was going 110 miles an hour. And now I'm literally not
Yes.
doing anything. And so
You're like,
there's
"What is happening?"
there's an uneasiness that you're like, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something right
Yes.
now, or I'm supposed to be being pushed or going, going somewhere. And I think that's healthy.
Absolutely. And that's like something that, we don't control. Like I didn't set that up about camp. And it's just this natural thing that you just put words to that happens when camp ends. But then when you make that your lifestyle, it's like, whoa, that could really change me into someone that, is a completely different person in the best way in a year, and then is a completely different person in the best way in 5 years. And, I think that, I'm the type of person that when I hear like a podcast or I hear someone speaking, I'm like, well, I haven't done that every single time. I haven't done these, like I haven't made the hardest choices every single time. And it's a little bit of this shame that we feel for not doing everything. And that's a little bit of my personality. But I think that there's just like a lot of wisdom in just reminding yourself the truths of what God tells us is that we're never going to do it all. We're never going to be perfect. But what does Jesus ask us to do? He asks us to follow him and to try to learn from him and be like him. And this year I was telling even some of my family about reflecting on what this year's looked like for me. And it's like, I feel like a completely different person. And I look back and I'm like, well, I've always followed the Lord and I've always been a Christian and I've always loved the Lord and I've worked at camp for 5 years. You'd think that I would be this person 3 years ago, but it's just like, taking steps now. And so some of the things I talked to my girls about, which I love this group of, they are leaders. They're so awesome. But I was telling them like, you have to be self-aware enough to ask the Lord or to pray or to whatever it is that you do to say, what's my next step? Like, what's the thing that I just need to do tomorrow? Or what's the thing I need to do right now? And I need to do that. And I need to, take ownership of that. And I need to follow whatever God's asking me to do. And then let me see what the next thing is. And so I think that it's just being willing. That's counterculture, just being willing to do things, to do the hard thing, but just looking at like, what's the next step? And sometimes it's, you don't know, and it's praying and it's saying like, Lord, what is the thing that you want me to do? Or sometimes you hear things like, there are a couple things this year that I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want me to do that? But it's just being willing to take it. And most of the time they're small and they're little and it builds to, something much bigger that you have no idea that would even happen. So absolutely, I agree with what you said.
There's just a reason that there's a leadership void in our world. I mean, there is a reason, because it's not easy, and we naturally go to what's easy. It's easier to complain. It's easier to be negative. It's easier to be lazy. It's easier to cut corners. And if most people do it, it's even easier.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Follow
easier,
the majority. Just do it.
It's easier to apologize, or it's easier to like not take ownership of things versus like apologizing and like owning up. Because like sometimes it is so crazy. I was telling somebody about this. There was a time that I like raised my voice and I was really frustrated with my kids one day at school. And I literally like felt this like uneasiness in me of like, you messed up and they're going to think that's fine if you don't, lead them in apologizing. And I think that there are so many times where I would, respect leaders more if they would have just come in and said, hey, I don't know it all. And I'm sorry because this was not okay. And this, I don't want you to think that this is an acceptable, thing that happened. And so I think that when you also have leaders that do that, it's like, it changes the game. And I'm in no way perfect, but I've felt the safeness that my kids feel in my room. There was like a girl that came and told me something a couple weeks ago, and she's a goofball, but she was like, I told you because I trust you. And I was like, thank you for telling me. That's awesome. But it's just like, you can't just like magically create, something like that. You have to be willing to do the really hard, annoying things, because I definitely don't want to apologize to a bunch of 9-year-olds. That's not my dream day. But it's just coming in and like owning those things.
What you're doing right now, it's so funny. Like, because I think me and Dave were in a similar position, but we're able to watch from the outside the things that you are learning and that are being ingrained into you, and doing like very things like that. Like, I'm gonna need to apologize to my whole class because I messed up. Those things they drift over into marriage and parenting and life in general. It's not even just that. It's fun to watch from the outside because
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I remember like for you to learn those lessons right now and actually do them, which is very uncomfortable to apologize to young kids who don't know hardly anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very humbling thing to do. Oh my gosh, that's foundational right there.
That's so good. Well, Maggie, we appreciate having you on, and I just
Love
want
it.
to tell everybody out there, leadership can be lonely.
Yes.
And, when you look
Absolutely.
around and think, I'm the only one, it's because you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to encourage you, if you're just like everybody else in the room, you're probably being average.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to start stepping up.
That's good.
You need to start stepping up. Get around people who will challenge you. If they don't challenge you, they don't change you.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love talking about leadership.
So good.
Maggie loves talking about leadership. Jason's learning how to be a leader. So this is
In
just
the beginning stages.
Switch those around.
so. Anyway, we appreciate you having you on. This
Love
was
it.
Maggie's second podcast.
One of many.
Not sure if this one got recorded. If not, we're going to have Maggie back for a third
It'll
podcast.
be great.
So
It'll be awesome.
Tyler, do we feel good about this one?
I think so, but I'll check the film.
So anyway,
it.
life, legacy, and leadership. Thank you, Maggie Pinkston.